Welcome back, guys, to SCU RV 3.7. If you haven't already seen the cinematic that I released just before this video, I have already shown the main feature of this pack in a short 2-minute clip, just to make things a little bit easier for you guys if you don't usually stick around for me rambling about random stuff. So yeah, if you are just more interested in seeing the new Skybox features that have been introduced in SCU RV 3.7, then I do recommend going and watching the video that I've already posted, labeled simply as the cinematic for the Skybox updates. That should be the video just immediately before this one if you look on my channel and the videos in the release order. But other than that, if you are here for the usual showcase video, then today we're going to be talking about some other changes that come alongside SCUR v3.7, and we're also going to be having a bit of a talk about what's going to be happening in the near future in terms of my data packs and my resource packs and my plans for the next year, and a look back on 2020 in general as well. So sit back, relax, and welcome. Yeah, boy. So if you haven't already seen the Skybox features, I'm going to quickly run that clip now. Yeah, it's a nice little cinematic. You know, it's a really sped up version of me just recording certain views for like 10 minutes, and I just speed it up by like 8 times or something. It's quite nice. So I'll let you see some of the new features in the Skybox, and then we shall return shortly for some more information about the most recent update for SCUR. And there you have it. So that is really the main bulk of the features that will be introduced in this version of SCUR. Obviously, you can see a little bit of the clouds here while I'm playing as well. I do quite like that. It's a very, very subtle cloud layer around the edge of the world, as you can see there. Unfortunately, this is just the problem with the skyboxes in Optifine right now. There are occasionally very sharp edges in the skybox there. You can also kind of see where the top part of the skybox is as well. And yet on this corner, you can't see anything. On this corner, it looks fine as well. There isn't really much I can do about this, it would seem. It's just a little bit awkward trying to plan for how certain things are going to look. If I ever do figure out a better way of dealing with that in the future, I will come back to this and try and fix it. Obviously, I do have more plans for the skybox. Some things that I have in mind off the top of my head are meteor showers in specific biomes. I also want to have like animated versions of the Southern Lights, but Southern Lights, Northern Lights, animated versions of the Northern Lights or the Aurora Borealis, whatever you want to call it, because I think it looks really nice, but I think it could look better if it was animated, or maybe I could just have a combination of both, or neither, or something along those lines. I'm not really sure. I have a few other ideas for what I want to do with the Skybox, but for now, the Aurora and the Rainbow are the main kind of special features, apart from obviously that lovely pink, orange, blue sunrise that you would have seen in the previous video. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to get on with some of the more features in the pack, and then we're going to have a talk about some other things. There really aren't many features today. I apologize in advance for the fact that this version of SCUR is so lacking, but we'll get to that in just a moment. So first of all, you may remember in the last few updates we've been doing a few things with biomes and obviously biome color maps as well. I designed entirely new textures for all the saplings. We have obviously oak, pine, birch, cacao, acacia, and dark oak. And if this is a new concept to you, I don't know if you would know this already, but in my resource pack, spruce trees are changed to pine trees, and jungle trees are changed to cacao trees, just to make them a little bit more accurate to their real-life counterpart, just because I didn't like the fact that the trees all had real names, and then one of them is just called jungle, so yeah. But yeah, anyway, on to the actual feature in today's version. Obviously, the oak sapling is the thing in question here. All I've really done is just simply tweak the coloration of this thing so that it stands out a little bit better in certain biomes. As you can see there, it's very subtle, but now when we're in the biome where the sapling will look like its default version, the edges of where the green leaves are do stand out a little bit more as opposed to mushing into the background, and that was kind of a problem in the previous versions of SCUR. The shade of green that was on the leaves of this sapling was so similar to the ground that if you looked at it from a distance, it would look really odd. But now you can kind of see where the edges are, and it stands out a little bit nicer against the background. And I think it just overall looks a lot nicer in general. Moving on from there, we have the trapdoor, the iron trapdoor to be precise. Now, one thing that's been in my pack for quite a while, I will quickly showcase, is to do with doors. If we take the oak door and the iron door, these are the doors in question, as you can see here. Now, Minecraft originally only had two doors. It had the wooden door and it had the iron door, and the only thing that was different about them was the fact that you could open a wooden door with your hand, like so, but you couldn't open an iron door unless you had redstone. So if I get like a lever, let's see, we can open the door like that. Now, what I thought would be a cool idea would be to give these two doors different textures, because when the new doors were introduced, when all the different versions of wood got things like fences and pressure plates and doors, and obviously we have a bunch of other options now, obviously all of the new doors had original textures. So we have the pine door, which looks very solid, the birch door, which almost looks like a paper door, we have the cacao door, which originally had a questionable shape, but I've changed it, so there you go. We have the acacia door, arguably one of my favorites with these vertical slats. It looks really nice. I think it could go into many types of builds, that kind of door. And then obviously we have the dark oak door, which is a very modern looking door. Now, for a time, and I believe still in vanilla Minecraft to this day, the wooden door and the iron door share pretty much the same pattern. Now, that annoys me because when you have all these unique textures for all these different doors, why would the iron door and the wooden door share the same style? Because if Steve is creative enough to design different doors when making them, why is he so boring when it comes to the iron door? What does Steve have against iron doors? Maybe Steve has some sort of historical... wow, I didn't expect that. Maybe Steve has some sort of trauma relating to iron doors. You know, that would be... interesting lore right there. So what I did is I simply changed the texture for the iron door, and now it's like a very much like a jail door almost, I guess. You can only really see through the window if you stand right up against it, and if you look through like there, as you can see. And I really like that. I think it makes it much cooler, and it makes it look much more fortified. This is what it's supposed to be, obviously. It doesn't have a handle still, so you can't open it with your fist, although this one does have a handle, and you can open that baby whenever you feel like. Yeah, in other words, basically, I just wanted to give the iron door a unique texture so that we had 7 doors and 7 unique textures as opposed to 7 doors and 6 unique textures. That was what I was going for with this. I then realized I didn't give the iron trapdoor the same treatment, because obviously now we have all these new types of trapdoors. We have pine trapdoor, birch, cacao, acacia, and dark oak, and unfortunately it was the exact same problem. If you ever had a wooden trapdoor and an iron trapdoor, they would share the same pattern. So it would be these 4 3x3 windows in each corner, as you can see there. Basically, it would just be an identical pattern, but silver. And that was breaking this kind of idea of having unique door textures for the iron door. So to follow along with that, I've kind of gone with a similarly fortified and very modern looking pattern by almost having it look a bit like a well. I think this would work really well as like a sewer build. Like if you were building like a street or something, you could have an iron trapdoor look like a grate, or like I can't think of the word right now for some reason, but you know, like a sewer grate when you're on like a street and you would see that, and it's designed for like rainwater to go into it or something. I think that's a really cool idea. I think that looks really, really good, and I think it's a much better improvement on the original iron trapdoor. And again, all we're really going for here is variety and uniqueness. So again, 7 trapdoors, 7 designs, as opposed to 7 trapdoors and 6 designs, because Minecraft needs to become consistent. And that's why we made this pack, because Minecraft is very inconsistent. So onwards from that, we have the Lectern. This is more of a update as opposed to a new texture. The Lectern has had a texture in SCUR for a while now, where the bookshelf had been taken off the front of the Lectern. I actually gave a new recipe to the Lectern in SGT, which is my primarily resource pack and gameplay tweaks pack in general, which basically meant that this block no longer had a bookshelf in its recipe. It doesn't really make any sense to me that you would need a bookshelf for this exact block. It's not that expensive of a block. It doesn't have that good of a purpose. There is no reason for it to consume a bookshelf. It's just a piece of wood in a specific shape, really. That's all well and good, but obviously if you had SCUR installed and you didn't have gameplay tweaks installed, then the Lectern would still make no sense. And if you only had SGT installed, you would be crafting this item without a bookshelf, and it would have a bookshelf on the front if you didn't have SCUR installed. So obviously we have SDR, which is Scalabor's data pack resources. That is now on version 1.14.8. Basically, the Lectern texture is now a part of SDR. So if you are playing with SCUR, you will now start to see the bookshelf texture on the front of the Lectern again, unless of course you have SDR installed, which is designed to go alongside, you know, SGT, SMC, SBS, all of the data packs that I maintain, and that will basically mean that you now have this old texture from SCUR, which makes sense, but only if you have the appropriate recipe. So yeah, similar to that, we also have a new arrow. Some of you may know in a recent update to SGT, I completely changed the arrow recipe. It used to be obviously that you would craft them with feathers, a stick, and flint. I changed it to that you craft them with feathers, a stick, and iron nuggets. I've always found that arrows are a little bit awkward to craft and use early game just because they're not that renewable, and it's usually much easier to set up an entire skeleton farm than actually go out and find enough flint to craft a plentiful amount of arrows. So I simply changed the recipe to involve an iron nugget as opposed to flint. And even though it may seem a little bit overpowered or a little bit unbalanced, I think it's fair because there are a lot of things that you can be crafting with iron, and if you want to sacrifice some of that iron that you will no doubt already have around to make arrows, then I say fair play to you, because these things do get used up instantly. They're not that amazing. Obviously arrows aren't the most powerful thing in the world, and again, every player can just get an infinity bow late game anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, I don't think. But yeah, as I was saying, obviously this is a similar texture to the Lectern here. I made this texture for SCUR, and then I instantly realized that this was an SDR feature, because the texture for the arrow basically implies that there is a metal arrowhead and a more white feathery tip. As you can see there, they now look quite different. It's a very subtle change, but obviously the head of the arrow is more irony as opposed to more dull and grey, and I don't know how to describe it, but yeah. And then I realized, obviously, that texture only really makes sense if you have SGT installed, because it's running off of the idea that the arrow is being made with an iron nugget as opposed to flint. So this is a texture that gone straight to SDR. So unless you have SDR installed alongside SGT or any of the other data packs, then your arrows will still look the same. But this is basically just my way of saying there is a new texture in SDR that was added only recently, and that is why there is now an update 1.14.8 for SDR. Moving on from that, though, we do have some new updates for the arrows in SCUR. These are obviously tipped arrows. We have an arrow of poison, slowness, and instant damage. Is that instant damage? Harming. Yeah, arrow of instant damage. There you go. As you can see here, I've decided to add a little band around the shaft of the arrow that looks a little bit nicer. I just think it makes them a little bit more unique. It just adds some variety to the arrows and just makes them look a little bit different compared to the usual regular arrows that you'd be using elsewhere. I have barely ever used tipped arrows, if I'm being completely honest, but I'm hoping to add them as like more of a drop in maybe some of my data packs, and if they were, I think players would be a lot more inclined to use them, because crafting tipped arrows is a ball ache. Unfortunately, it's just not a very easy process, so maybe this means that they're a little bit nicer to look at and a little bit nicer to use as well. But yeah, moving on from that, we obviously have the Loom. In SCUR v3.6, I added a custom model for the Loom. It was an experimental idea. I wanted to test the idea of using block models to create more interesting textures for some of the more boring tool stations. Obviously, we have the Lectern, an interesting shape. We have like the furnace and the smoker and the blast furnace. The smoker has like smoke flames coming out of it, and the other ones have animations. We have anvils. There are so many cool and interesting things that you can use in builds, but the Loom is very boring in my opinion. It's very, very flat. It doesn't have much going for it. I mean, all of these back faces are the same, and what here, like at the top and the front, what is clearly supposed to invoke a 3D texture is just not, and I think it looks really shit. So I set out to try and make an entirely new texture for the Lectern, which kind of had the 3D kind of gap in the middle here, and it looked like there was actually string being woven in between rungs, and I actually think it looks really good. The only problem was, if you put them next to each other like this, the lighting would completely break, and the block would look silly. Now, that isn't a problem I can fix, unfortunately. That is a problem with Minecraft's rendering system. If a day ever comes in the future where you can change block lighting with a resource pack, then I will absolutely be re-adding that Loom model, because I think it looked really good. But for the time being, it's a feature that doesn't 100% work properly, so I'm going to just exclude it for the time being. So sorry, Loom, you have to go back to being boring now, and that is the default Loom, as you can see there. So yeah, sorry about that. But, you know, for anyone who still has SCUR v3.6, the Loom was broken the entire time, so you're welcome. I just fixed it for you. But yeah. So yeah, here we have the Enchanted books. As you guys may know, obviously the mending book has been pink for quite a while now. I think maybe for like since version 2 even. Actually, yeah, since before version 2, I believe the mending book was pink. What this means is if you ever have a tool that has mending on it, or a book that has mending on it, it will be changed out to have this pink band if it's a book, and also a pink glint if it's a weapon as well. So if I get myself 2 swords, I'll just demonstrate how different they actually look. You know, in fact, I think iron's probably better for showcasing it, actually. So if I do enchant Excalibur, and then just do like unbreaking, and then do enchant Excalibur mending, you can see the difference between the two textures. So obviously, usually my textures by default have this kind of like red glow, and that's what you can see there on the unbreaking sword. But if you ever have mending, which is this last book here, then it will have the kind of purpley blue glow, indicating that it's a mending tool. And I think that ability to make things stand out so much more if they're mending is a really cool feature, because obviously mending is arguably the best enchantment in the game. So for it to have its own unique book and unique glints, I think that's really good. I think that's a really good way of doing things. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, those are existing things. We don't need to talk too much about those. This is the cursed book texture. I decided to add a new texture for the cursed books as well as the other ones. And again, you can see it has its own custom glint. It's got this kind of rushing blue texture over the top of it, which does apply to any tools that have a curse. So again, I can get myself an iron sword, and I can do enchant Excalibur. How do I do this? Vanishing curse? Yeah, vanishing curse. And you can see again, it gets a very blue and very kind of almost like sinister looking texture. And if you look at that in my hand there, you can see it does have the same rushing enchantment going over the top of it, similar to how the book looks. But yeah, my simple design choice here is to make books with curses stand out a little bit more, because I think this kind of looks like a very old and tattered book. It's very thin, it's very frail, it looks like it's been dulled as well. It's got a different ribbon that's kind of hanging off and loose. I just think it looks really good, and that's just simply a personal design choice, basically. So yeah, so we have the original books with their orange glow, we have mending books with their pink glow, and we now have cursed books which look all old and decrepit and have this kind of strange blue texture over them as well. So there you go. 3 unique book variants, all 4 very different things. So kind of the best books in the game and the worst books in the game, and just everything else, the standard kind of books as well. So there you go. New book, cursed books. That applies to Curse of Vanishing and also Curse of Binding as well. Moving on from that, we have item frames. You may, if you had a keen eye, notice throughout this entire video, item frames do have a new texture on them entirely, and that is actually just to simply make them match up more so with their item form. As you can see here on the right, this is how an item frame would look in the inventory, in your hand, in an item frame itself, and I've simply made it so that the item frame it's in kind of more so matches the item frame as it looks in the item form. I've never been a huge fan of item frames as like things. I don't really like the way they're colored. I didn't like the kind of oak wood like banner thing, not banner, border. I didn't like the kind of oak wood border. I didn't like the shade of the leather in the back. I just thought it looked really bad. And then I kind of realized the item form for these items is really, really good, but then the entity form that you see in World looks really bad. So I kind of just took the palette of the item form and applied it to the model. And I think it looks really good. I just think it looks really, really good. I think it looks much, much better. You can see it with obviously all of these with the arrows here, with the books, and of course this blank one here. I just think it looks much, much nicer. And this is definitely a texture that will be staying in SCUR v4. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about SCUR v4 in just a moment as well. Finally, last but not least, we have lily pads. Lily pads are now going to be biome dependent for their color. It used to be in Minecraft that lily pads would always be quite a lime and quite harsh, vivid green color. For the longest time, I didn't know how to fix that, but I have since figured out how to use color maps on any block using Optifine's custom color map feature. So yes, lily pads are now completely biome dependent, and if you're in a cold biome, they will look light green. If you're in a desert, they will look very dull and brown. And of course, if you're in a plains, they will look nice and dark green as they do here. So lily pads are now biome dependent, which is exactly what I wanted them to be. So thankfully, you can rest easy now. Your lily pads are pretty once more. Yeah. So that concludes all the features that are going to be involved in SCUR v3.7. Obviously, this is kind of one of the smaller updates of SCUR in recent memory. Not many kind of realistic changes, more so just to do with the immense job that is the Skybox. Even though the Skybox seems quite simplistic and it looks like it only has a very small number of features, it's actually an entire 24 files to make sure that it works correctly in the exact way that I want it to. I'm still not 100% sure that I fully understand how these photography blend methods work, to be completely honest. Some of the Skybox features use burn, some of them use add, some of them use multiply, some of them use alpha. It just seems to work out in the end, but yeah, obviously the sky is quite complex. I won't go into the full details of how it works. You can figure it out by reading the files if you really want to yourself, but essentially the only thing really worth knowing is obviously you will always have this cloud coverage over the sky, as you can see, and that will differ based on your biome and also the weather. You also have the sun, which moves around in kind of a non-traditional fashion by going from the horizon and then arcing around to the other horizon, as you'd expect. You have the beautiful sunset and sunrise. You obviously have the Milky Way in the sky at night. And yeah, that's about it, other than the Aurora Borealis and the rainbow. As I mentioned before, I am planning on adding some more features in the future, but for now that will just about do it for the Skybox. Already a whole 24 files just to get such a small number of features working in the exact intended way, but hopefully it was worth it. Now yeah, it's also worth mentioning as well before we do finish up here, one thing that was broken in SCUR v3.6 was actually the new color maps. We were missing a section from the grass color map, so occasionally if you were high up in certain biomes, the grass would be black because it simply wouldn't be having a color applied to it. That has been fixed now, so you shouldn't find any more occurrences of black grass in your world. If you do, please do let me know, and I'll try and figure out where I've gone wrong and get it improved for SCUR v4, or just in a future update whenever that may be released. But yes, speaking of SCUR v4, as I mentioned before, this will be the last version of SCUR v3.7. Wait, no, this will be the last version of SCUR v3. SCUR v4 is going to center entirely around the new Jappa textures. And as sad as it is, as much as I'm enjoying this new sky, this is what I'm going to have to start getting used to in the very near future. Yeah, taking the programmer art off as well. It feels awful. But yeah, back to the blaring white screen, and yeah, here we are in Minecraft 1.14 as it's supposed to look. Now, this is the kind of resource pack that I've been avoiding for the last 6 months. I really don't like it. There are so many features of the new textures that I do not like. It really amazes me that the menu screen is so clean, and then when you go into game, everything looks so mushy and so kind of like odd. Like look at this. This doesn't fit at all. Like, as much as this looks good on its own, nothing else in Minecraft looks like that. Nothing. And it feels like there's no theme. There is not a consistent theme in the game anymore. That looks so bad to me. That looks awful. That looks like something you'd see in one of those dodgy, like, Gmod animations that is like a fake Minecraft world. But no, that's actually how it's supposed to look. It's mental. Like, this shade for nether brick, ugh, don't like it. The way that the cobblestone looks, don't like it. The way that the wood looks, don't like it. I don't like any of it. It's so bad. And yet, here I am thinking to myself, well, that could be a really great project if I just got off my ass and worked on these new textures. That's entirely what I did with the original version of SCDT. I took vanilla Minecraft's textures, I decided I didn't like them, and I remade them myself. And that is entirely what we're going to do with the new 1.14 plus Jappa textures. So yeah, SCUR v4 and onwards is going to be for the new version of Minecraft textures. If there is a demand for the old school resources, then I will update them in a kind of similar way that I will update them for like 1.12.2, for example, for like modded purposes. So yeah, if people do actually really want the old school textures, then I will do it. Otherwise, there are aspects of this that I do really like. For example, the grass. I really like the grass. Like, I think the grass looks really good. One thing I will say about the new textures, for the most part, not the vines, for the most part, I think the natural textures look really good. Like, for example, the tree leaves are another example. Like, obviously, these leaves are the leaves that we actually have in SCUR right now, as it is, because I just really like the way these leaves look. But the bark looks ridiculous. I don't know what it is about it, but it just looks so bad. I don't know what it is. Like, it looks even worse on a house. Looks horrendous. I just don't get what it is about this wood texture. It just looks so chaotic and like sprawling. It's not good. I think Jappa's textures excel in natural blocks, and then with non-natural blocks, it's very inconsistent. Like, I like this texture. I like this texture. I don't like this texture. And they're so different. They are completely different textures. This looks so much more like the old bark, and yet this looks so different. Why? I don't get it at all. But anyway, yeah, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm going to be doing for my, new resource pack, SCUR v4. It is going to be designed for Minecraft 1.14's textures, so no longer will you be playing with the programmer art. If you have been playing with SCUR, obviously programmer art is the classic look of Minecraft. No longer will you be playing with programmer art in future versions of SCUR. I don't currently have any sort of time frame for SCUR v4 because I do want to wait for Optifine to be released as well. And last I checked, Optifine is still only at 54% completion. Obviously, we will have to wait for the man to do his thing. We are very patient with Optifine. It's a fantastic mod. I think it's a bit of a problem that so many have become reliant on it, to be completely honest. But yeah, so SCUR v4 definitely won't be coming out until at the very earliest Optifine's updated to 1.15. So yeah. But yeah, that's about it. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed SCUR v3.7, and I hope you enjoyed SCUR v3. And yeah. Oh, that's kind of sad, isn't it? I'm here it's like the end of an era. It's so sad. Not to worry. It is good times now. Yeah, it's really good times. I have so many ideas for the next few months for data pack resources, data pack add-ons themselves, singulating, what? I just made like a big word to sound intelligent, didn't I? What's the word that I'm looking for? Isolating. Let's just use the word isolating. Isolating certain modules of my data packs and resource packs to be kind of released as individual features that you can mix and match to your own liking, much like that of something along the lines of like vanilla tweaks, for example. I want to do all of that in the next year as well. I want to make a start on the resource pack tutorials, but it's kind of at the back of my to-do list right now, if I'm being completely honest. I've taken a much bigger interest in data packs in the last few months, and given that I am going into a sort of coding career background, it's kind of really good for that as well. So it's really yeah, I really enjoy the coding of data packs and stuff. It's really fun. But yeah, next video that we'll be releasing will no doubt be an SMC video, but sometime in between them we might have some sort of other things, the usual weird filler videos. But yeah, I can safely say this will be the last time you ever see SCUR in its v3 format, and next time we return, it will be looking a little bit more like the world does now. Obviously very different how it looks now, because I think this looks awful, but it's going to look more like this than it did before. Much darker, much duller, and much more consistent. But yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the final update of SCUR v3. Please do feel free to join the Discord if you are interested in any more discussions. And again, if you know anyone who would be interested in the channel, feel free to recommend. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to like this video. Feel free to dislike this video if you didn't like it. Feel free to comment saying that you're going to donate 1,000 euros to my pension scheme. That'll be really good. Follow me on Duolingo. It's Scalibur was Take, because Scalibur was taken was too long. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Reddit, even though I'm permanently banned from r/Minecraft. Follow me on Instagram. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, bye.